In this video, I'm going to talk about solving percent problems by creating a proportion. Percent problems can be solved also by creating equations. However, depending on the problem, it is sometimes more difficult to determine an equation that works, and many people have great success with the proportion method. Let's say you are asked to solve the problem, what is 40% of 95? What you are really being asked is 40 out of 100 is how many out of 95? What you're really being asked for is a proportion. This is really comparing the part to the whole. So I'm going to write that down because 40% means 40 as a part to the whole 100. If I wanted to go through and solve this now, I could certainly go through and say 40 times 95, and I know that 40 times 95 is equal to 3,800. I just did that quick calculation. So 100 times x also has to equal 3,800. So in this particular case, x is equal to 38. The nice thing about solving percent problems with proportions is that there is a great way to remember how to set up the needed proportion regardless of the type of percent problem given. And that is by remembering is over of is equal to percent over 100. Go back to the above problem and notice that in that particular problem I do have the words is and of. So all I'm going to do is I am going to set up in my particular problem whatever words are associated with that. With the word is, it says what is. And I don't know what that what is. So my is my x, and I have of 95. My of is my 95. Whatever I have attached to the percent sign is always going to be over 100. So I have 40 over 100. Notice that these two equations, this, or these two proportions I should say, and this are exactly the same. I've just switched the two sides of them. So it was very easy to set this up using is over of equals percent over 100. So there are really three different types of percent problems that we will be working with. First of all, finding a percent of a number, for instance, what is 15% of 80. Second, finding the percent one number is of another, for instance, 18 is what percent of 90. And third, finding a number from a percent that you know. For instance, 60 is 75% of what number. Notice that in all three of these cases, we do have the words is over of. And because we have the words is over of in all three of these cases, it's very easy to use is over of is equal to percent over 100 to solve all three of these different types of percentage problems. I am going to solve all three of the problems on the previous page by using the is over of statement. The very first problem that we were given, what is 15% of 80, the is the what. That's what I don't know. So I'm going to put an X for that. The of is the 80. So I have x over 80 is equal to 15 is what's attached to the percentage sign. So it's 15 over 100. Now I'm going to use that idea of proportion, and I know that I need to multiply 80 times 15. 80 times 15 is equal to 1200. So I know that x times 100 also has to equal 1200. So that answer, x would have to be equal to 12. So 15% of 80 is equal to 12. The second problem was 18 is what percent of 90? Now I have 18 is, so I'm going to put 18 up on the top, and it says of 90. The number 90 is associated with the of. As far as the percent goes, it says what percent. I don't know what the percent is, so in this particular case, that's going to be my x because I don't know what it is. And now once again, I'm going to go through and I'm going to cross multiply to solve that. 18 times 100 is equal to 18. 90 times x also has to equal 18. And if I go through and do the math, x is equal to 20. So the answer to this is 18 is 20%, because it asks for the percent, 20% of 90. The third problem that we talked about was 60 is 75% of what number? Here, the 60 is the is. It says of what number? I don't know what the number is, so that's where my x is going to go. And 75 is associated with the percent, so it's 75 over 100. If I want to go through and solve that, I know that 60 times 100 is equal to 6,000. So I know that x times 75 also has to equal 6,000. And when I go through and do the math, I get an answer of x is equal to 80. So 60 is 75% of 80 would solve that particular problem. Notice that for all three of these problems, using that is over of statement made it fairly easy to come up with a proportion that would work. Just for practice, I have three problems listed here. And what I would like you to do is I'd like you to go through and use the is over of method to go through and solve each one of these three problems. When you get done, go ahead and start this up again. So I'd like you to pause this, go ahead and do the problems, and then start up again and just watch quickly as I go through those. Okay, hopefully you've had time to go through and do the problems. In that very first problem, I have 12 is. So I'm going to put 12 on the top. It says of 60. The 60 is going to go on the bottom. It says what percent. I don't know what my percent is, so that's equal to my x, and it's over 100. Now, in order to go through and solve that, I know that 12 times 100 is equal to 1200. I know that 60 times x also has to equal 1200. So my answer to that is 20. So that means 12 is 20% of 60. In the second problem that I have 20%. So the 20 is going to be associated with the 100. It does say 20% of what number is 430. So the 430 is on the top. I don't know what my of is because it's of what number. That's my x. And as I said before, the 20 is what the percentage is, so it's 20 over 100. When I go through and solve this, 430 times 100 gives me 43,000, and 20 times x also has to equal 43,000. So once again, going through that math, I'm going to get for an answer here of x is equal to 2,150. And using the calculator will certainly give you that answer. My third problem is, what is 15% of 40? In this particular case, I don't know what my is because that is saying what is. My of is 40, so I'm going to have x over 40 is equal to 15% is associated with the 100, so now I've set up my proportion. When I solve this, 15 times 40 does give me 600, so I know 100 times x also has to give me 600, so in this particular case, the answer is 6. So 15% of 40 is equal to 6. What you really need to be able to do in this course is to solve applied problems dealing with percent. So I'm going to give you some examples. Here's the first one. On a test of 80 items, Pedro got 95% correct. How many items did he get correct? I would suggest that when you have something like this, that the very first thing you do is that you rewrite the question into an is-of statement. What's really being asked in this particular problem is, what is 95% of 80? Once I have it written in that format, it's easy to use the is over of equals percent over 100 proportion method. It says in here, what is? I don't know that, so that's my x. It says of 80, so I'm going to have 80 on the bottom, and 95 is what's associated with the percent, so it's equal to 95 over 100. When I go through and solve that now, I know that 80 times 95 using my calculator is 7,600, so x times 100 also has to equal 7,600, and if I divide 7,600 by 100, I get an answer of 76. So Pedro got 76 of the items correct. Here's another example. Sam consumes a total of 3,500 calories per day. If 1,000 of these calories are in the form of fats, what percent of Sam's daily food intake is fat? Sometimes the difficulties that people have is coming up with that is over of statement from a story problem. Remember that there are different ways to write that is over of statement. Certainly one way that that statement could be written is you could say 1,000 is what percent of 3,500. And some people may write the is over of statement that particular way. You could also write it as what percent of 3,500 is 1,000. Both of these statements say exactly the same thing. We're just writing the words a different way. In either case, as I go through and do this particular problem, I do have the 1,000 associated with the is. So I'm going to have 1,000 on the top, and I have the 3,500 associated with the of. So I have 1,000 over 3,500 is equal to, I don't know what percentage, so that's my x over 100 in both of those cases. And now I've gone through and I have set up my proportion. When I go through and solve that, I know I need to multiply 1,000 times 100. 1,000 times 100 is going to give me an answer of 100,000. So I know the 3,500 times x also has to equal 100,000. And now if I go through and divide 100,000 divided by that 3,500, now I'm going to be getting an answer. And my answer in this case is going to give me a percentage. It's approximately 28.57 when you use a calculator. And I would go through then and say that the answer to this is 28.57%. Here's another example. At Dalby Video, 38 movies were not returned on time over the weekend. If 25% of the movies rented over the weekend were not returned on time, how many movies were rented in all? So the very first thing that we need to do is come up with our is over of statement. Once again, there are different ways of writing it, but certainly one way it could be written is 38 is 25% of what? If I want to go through and solve this now, I have the 38 associated with the is, of what I don't know what my of is, so that's equal to x, and the percentage is 25, so it's 25 over 100. If I want to go through and solve this now, I need to go through 38 times 100 is 3,800. So I know 25 times x also has to equal 3,800. So if I go through and do that math, I get x is equal to 152, which means that 152 movies were rented in all at Dolby Video on the weekend. Before going on to the next video in this module, where I will talk about special types of percentage problems, I would like you to complete a quick check on this video, which can be found next. In it, you will find 5 quick problems that can be used to check your understanding. If you do well in the quick check, you are ready to watch the next video. If you have difficulty with it, or just want additional practice, I also have some additional worksheets you can look at, along with the answers. You can also access additional websites that discuss this topic, and links to those websites can be found in this module. As always, you can contact me for additional help too. Thank you.